Hello and welcome to the Weakest Link. My name is Yusuf and today we will be talking about next generation firewalls and going to have a look at world's #1 firewall by Palo Alto Networks. So let's have a look. What I've got today is Palo Alto Networks PA220. It's a small form factor firewall, perfect for small offices, branch offices, retail locations. So before we jump in and look inside the box, let's have a look at some of the highlights of PA220. It's the world's first ML-powered next-generation firewall, being 8 times leader in Gartner Magic Quadrant for next-generation firewall category. Highest security effectiveness score in 2019 by NSS Labs. It has been able to block 100% of the evasions tested during the NSS lab reports. Extends visibility and security to all devices, including unmanaged IoT devices. So that's a really great feature. Supports high availability, active-active and active-passive. So customers can configure the firewall in different redundancy configurations. It's a very silent fanless firewall, so from application point of view, we can easily deploy it in a home office environment, retail office, or could be deployed in a branch office for connectivity back to the headquarters. From a deployment point of view, we do have option for zero-touch provisioning. So again, a great feature. Let's open the box. So I've noticed that these firewalls are still manufactured in United States. It says over here, made in USA. So I guess this is again really great about Palo Alto firewalls that they are still manufactured in the United States. So just taking out the firewall, here are some bubble wraps. There's a accessory and a tray in the box. Power card. Management method and control of pollution for electronic information products. Some China RHS declarations. That's the accessory bag. Rack mount kits. Cat cable. Mini USB to USB cable for management. And the power adapter. So here's the firewall. We've got 8 1 gig interface, dedicated management port on the firewall, and then there is a console port with RJ45 connector on it. There's a console USB console port as well, and then we have a dedicated USB port on the firewall. Some LEDs over here. The first one is for the HA status, high availability, and then the firewall status. There are any alarms, temperature, power. At the back of the firewall, we've got power 1 and power 2. So obviously I've got this firewall with just one power, so we're going to plug in that here. And then there is a ground connector as well. So what I'm going to do is connect this firewall from the management board, and let's look into how we set up this firewall. So I've connected the power and the management port to the firewall. It's really silent. That's really great. I cannot hear any sort of any kind of a noise from this firewall, so that's again great. My management board is connected to my laptop through RJ45 cat cable, network cable, and inside the box there's a quick start guide which explains how do you mount and all the network connectivity requirements for the management board. So as mentioned on the quick start guide, the management IP, the default management IP on the firewall is 192.168.1.1. So I'm quickly going to set up my network adapter, and then we will look inside the configuration. Right, so let's go in and configure the laptop. So we'll configure a manual IP address here in the same network. I'm just going to give it 192.168.1.2, and the subnet is 255.255.255.0. Home router, just going to apply that configuration, open a new page, and it's going to show up connection is not private, so just giving you a warning that the certificate is not verified. That's all right. Go ahead and visit the website. Right, so management interface is up now. We quickly gonna log into the firewall. It's creating administrative session. Pop-up welcome window, taking you through some of the features of this PanOS 9.1 version. You do have option to click here, do not show again, or you can just leave it as it is and basically scroll through left and right to go through all the feature sets. Simply click on close to close the window. And so this is the main dashboard of PanOS version 9. Device name, all the general information. On the left hand side you've got the system resources, management CPU, data CPU, session counts. So really useful information if you're looking at what sort of throughputs are passing through or what sort of resource utilizations on the firewall. Got a logged in admins, so all your administrators logged in onto the firewall, you can see their names there. Data log will show up all the files, data is passing through the firewall. System log, basically who's logged in, who's logging in, who's logging out, all those security information passing through. And then we have a configuration logs on the right hand side. So any recent changes would appear there. Logs, so Palo Alto firewalls do support multi-sessions, so multiple admins can log in at the same time and make the changes on the same policy. So the idea is that if an administrator is working on a policy, they can create a lock so the other administrators can make the changes, commit the changes they have made without affecting the changes the other administrators are making. So ACC risk factor in last 60 minutes, so obviously it's sitting at 0%. ACC stands for Application Command Center. So that's a really nice dashboard on Palo firewalls, where you can quickly see what applications are in use, all the user information and all that. So let's get on to the device configuration quickly. So under the device tab, you have setup, where you can set up your management interface, some general settings of the firewall, and then scrolling down here, we have got license options. So as this firewall is brand new out of the box, we can see that there is no license information. Dynamic updates not being set up at all. There's no software library here which is downloaded or updated. So let's have a look at the setup options. So under the setup, we've got the management, where we can set up host name, domain, login banners, time zone, geolocation. And on the right hand side, we've got the panorama settings. So just in case, let's say if this is one of the firewalls which is managed by Panorama, so we will put in the Panorama details in here, like a Panorama server IP address and all the stuff. Then we have got some of the other settings here, banners and messages, message of the day if you want to set up message of the days. Logging and reporting settings, so we can see that the log storage is total 3.58 GB. So this firewall can store up to 3.5 GB of logs. And minimum password complexity, so if there is a requirement for your organization or the administrators needs to set up some sort of complexity for the passwords, this is exactly where you will set it up. So under operations, we have different options to save the configuration or import the saved configurations, load the pre-saved configurations, and then we have options to reboot the device or shut down the device. Under services, basically there is a settings for the DNS server, your NTP time server, and also the update server from where the firewall will go in and check in for the new updates. So that's, again, we're leaving everything to the default right now, and when I'll set up the interface and the DNS, we'll set that all up to the DHCP. So that's the management interface. Right now it's set up to default configuration as a static IP 192.168.1.1, and there's no gateway or MTU setup. Over here, administrative management services, so we can see that HTTPS and SSH is just ticked off. So we can manage on these two services. Under the network services, what does this mean is I'm allowing ping. So if I ping the management interface, I'll get a response. But if I remove the stick and apply the configuration, that means if I'm pinging the management interface, I'm not going to reply back. So that's the network services component. Over here, I can add permitted IP addresses. So let's say there's a set of IP addresses, host IP addresses, or there's a set of management network subnets where you only allow firewall management to be accessed from those IP addresses. This is where you're gonna put in. So let's assume that I want to allow the 1.0 network to be able to manage the device. I'll say network admins, or I can be more specific that just want to allow 1.100, and we can say security admin unbox. So yeah, that basically that's the idea here. There you go. So that's permitted IP addresses. I'm going to cancel that out. Telemetry. So yeah, application reports, threat prevention reports. You can go into configuration and set up that. So this is basically more of sharing sharing all these information with the Palo Alto global customer sharing community. So data is anonymized, but it really helps the community to build more intelligence. So that's optional opt-in sort of thing. So if you by default everything is checked off, so you're not sending any data. Under the content ID, there are some default settings. So URL filtering, URL continue timeout, 15 seconds, URL admin. So there could be some policies around how all these URL filterings and content ID settings requirements for your organization. You can come in here and set up the defaults. Wildfire, so here's the general setting. So under the general setting, again, we're setting up a public cloud. So we're using the default Wildfire public cloud address, which is wildfire.paloaltonetworks.com. And then under that, we have different file types, which we want when the firewall receives or sends these type of files, it's gonna send it to the sandbox, send it to the Wildfire for sandboxing. And we can set up the size limits as well over here, depending on our requirements. So, I mean, PE, APK, PDF, if you don't want to send any of these files, you can simply remove it from here. And then we have report benign files and report gray area files. It is recommended to select these two options so that you have that kind of reporting, what sort of files being sent through and what was the verdict. So even the file is benign, not being identified as malicious, you will still receive the report for that if we check those boxes. I'm gonna cancel that out. And over here we have session settings, so default session settings, timeout settings over here. So again, depending on the best practices and policies, you can come in here and set up the default timeouts and session settings. So that's on the management side. And then we have high availability configuration. Again, pretty simple to set up the high availability, different password profiles. So there is one really cool feature that Palo Alto has to offer. They call it day one configuration. So let's have a quick look at that. So the idea behind the day one configuration is that there are some recommendations. There is a best practices from Palo Alto. So rather than when you're configuring the firewall for the first time, rather than going in and making those changes manually and setting up all the best practices, you go in here and set up under your support portal. You go in and under the run day one configuration, you put in some basic information under the form, put your IP address of the firewall, subnet mask, default gateway, DNS, and logging, NTP, and then simply generate the config file and come back to the Palo Alto and import it. What's going to happen is that it's going to create all your device configuration as per the best practices. So your login banners will be configured, your security profiles will be there. So in objects, you can see that all these security profiles, they've got defaults. So these are not defined as per the best practices. So one way of doing is that we can set up all this manually or utilize day one configuration to set up all most of the configuration on the firewall as per the best practices suggested by Palo Alto, and then utilize that. So my recommendation would be that yes, I mean, let's utilize run day one configuration. It's readily available under the support customer support portal under the tools. So I'm gonna have another video dedicated to day one configuration, so watch out for that, and please subscribe to my channel. We will be putting out more videos on Palo Alto firewalls and other next generation firewalls we've got in the market. So watch out for those videos, and if you have any comments or recommendations, or if you guys want to see something specific on Palo Alto, please leave me a comment. I'll be more than happy to create a video for those and present it back to you guys. Thank you, and have a good day.